right, mate?
Hi mate, how are you?
I'm good. Has the anaesthetic worn off?
I'm all perfect and raring to go. I think that's what we want to hear, and that's what you are going to hear. So it's good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm great, mate. Yeah, I love the little dodge. We'll just ignore that. But yeah, we should really apologise because we've missed two. We missed Friday and we missed Monday. But basically, um, we're changing the upload slightly. So instead of doing two a week, so Monday and Friday, we're now just going to do one a week on Wednesdays. So that's how it's going to work from now on. It just works way better. And after this one, hopefully, we'll be making them a bit longer and a bit, basically, we'll do the two in the idea that I've got. We will talk about this after actually, but we basically want to make it longer.
Let's record it and then talk about it.
Exactly,
That's the
yeah,
bearded and broke way, isn't it?
exactly, yeah. We'll just figure it out at the time as we're recording it.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, definitely. So, what are we actually talking about? Because I have no clue.
So even better start. Just gets better and better, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, mate.
So I think it will be a good podcast to talk about the Premier League predictions and how the table will look like in 9 months' time.
Cool.
I know that we are doing it a little bit late because the Premier League has started, but I would like to think, because we've already had one match day and a little bit of second match day,
Yeah.
that we will have a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more research about what we are going to be predicting.
Mm.
So, I mean, we can do a end of transfer window prediction as well, and how that went, kind of rating every team. But this right now will be a Premier League, how we think it's going to be like and why we think it's going to end that way.
So yeah, I'll jump straight in with my one because West Ham being West Ham, we haven't made any significant transfers this season. I expect us once again to be battling relegation. I would not be surprised. I would be very surprised if we were to end up 14th or higher. I expect to be 15th or below, in the relegation scrap, if not actually relegated. Obviously, I don't want us to get relegated, but that's the way it's heading, basically. We've made no significant signings, and just looking at the table now, we've lost our first two games. So it doesn't look too good of a start.
Yeah, so that's West Ham. Shall I try and go from the bottom up to make it a little bit more structured? Right.
Yeah, go on.
So of course, the bottom two teams, which I think will get relegated. Again, this is all very opinionated. I might look like a complete mug in 10 months' time and it be completely wrong, which I'm sure it will be. But this is all predictions. That's what they're all about. So I think West Brom and Fulham are going to be the bottom two. I think Fulham, I mean, they're a club. They're a very yo-yo club. They've had, what was it, about 10 years ago now when the Roy Hodgson was at his peak, took them to Europa League final, and it's just never really been the same. I mean, they overachieved massively then. And West Brom, they got Slaven Bilic, which he used to be West Ham's manager a few years ago, I believe. But I'm not sure that they can attract many good players to keep them up. I know they've signed Ivanovic, the old Chelsea player, but he's got his walking stick out and he's 37, and I'm not really sure that's enough to really push on for that 15th spot, to solidify a Premier League spot.
Now, just on that point, West Ham recently sold one of our wingers, Grady Diang, I think it was, to West Brom, and he's like 20, 21, and he was really good for them last season. Obviously, it was the Championship, so it made life a bit easier for them. But, this was a signing that people in West Ham weren't expecting. We were expecting him to come back and play for us, and he's now been sold to West Brom. So I think a little bit higher of West Brom than perhaps you do. I do think they'll be in and around the same area of the table that West Ham are. I don't think they're a dead cert for relegation, though.
I'm not trying to say they're a shit team whatsoever.
Yeah.
I think the Premier League is getting more and more competitive every year, so the quality of football is getting better and better every year.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
we've got to place some places
exactly,
don't we? So
someone's got to finish somewhere.
Exactly. And Norwich last year, they completely flunked it, whereas Sheffield United did extremely well. So
Yeah, exactly.
might have the exact same thing here.
Exactly. Who knows?
So 18th place, as you said, I think it's going to be West Ham.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be too surprised, honestly, mate. Like, it's, the way West Ham were last season, we were dire. I
Yeah.
mean, we've lost our first 2 games this season, and
I
no
think
significant signings over the summer.
if you keep Declan Rice over this transfer window, I think you'll be very lucky to have him for the next year or so, because I don't think it's going to be a very similar situation as Aston Villa had last year with Jack Grealish. They were fighting to stay in the Premier League, and then they stayed in the Premier League, and he just went, well, I'm just going to sign a new contract, show my loyalty to you guys.
Yeah.
And I do think that to be a better footballer, this is a different, of course, we're not really talking about the league now, we're talking more about Jack Grealish, but he needs to go up to a team where they are contending for European spots year in, year out, to be that star that he can be, because he definitely has potential. But anyway, West Ham, there hasn't really been any major signings. You had post lockdown, you had Antonio play really well. You had a few players do really, really well, but I do feel like you don't really have the depth. So once 1 or 2 players get injured, that will be it. Like, it will be horrible losses and horrible games, and it will just be chucking it up to the striker, and it will be that survival mode, which you can't really do.
I think that's going to be the story of this season, where it's just going to be a tale of survival. And I see eerie similarities to, we last got relegated in the 2010-2011 season, and we had one good player on that team, and that was Scott Parker, who was a defensive midfielder. Looking at this one, obviously the level of talent has risen because the Premier League has slowly gotten better and better. But when you look at it in scale, if you follow me in terms of the talent on the team, I think West Ham are slightly better than we were proportionally in 2010-11 when we got relegated. And what we saw that year that we got relegated, we lost Scott Parker and we lost a ton of talent. Well, inverted commas talent, because that team was absolutely dire. I think this team is slightly better than that, but it's going to be a fight the whole year. Like, we've got to scrap for every single point we get, because there's no guarantee that we'll be in the league next year, and that doesn't surprise me at all, and I'm very worried.
Well, don't worry, you'll probably still beat Chelsea twice like you did last year.
That was such a lucky fluke.
It doesn't matter. A win's a win. It's football.
Exactly, yeah.
So 17th spot is a bit controversial, I think, with how everyone is at the moment. So I think it's going to be Leeds. I think it's not what everyone else thinks at the moment. Everyone else thinks that they're going to do really well. And I think they are a very good scoring team. However, that's very different from being in the Championship to being in the Premier League. We've seen that with Norwich last year. Yeah. We've seen that with Blackpool, I think, a few years ago as well, where they were playing very, very attractive football in the Championship.
Was such a fun team to watch, man.
And it did not happen in the Premier League. They just went down, and games were 6-0. And be it, I think Leeds are going to have more attacking options, where they've just signed Rodrigo, and they are going to be a little bit with more quality. That's why I think they are just going to scrape relegation. They are going to potentially survive it and stay.
They're still going to be in that fight, you reckon?
I think so. I think the league is about your defence, and as a Chelsea fan, I know that very well. So you can win games, but I think Alex Ferguson said, to win leagues and trophies, you need a solid defence. So I think that's what Leeds are struggling, because I'm not convinced with their defence. Right. Moving on, 16th, I think it will be Burnley. I think this is, again, very opinionated. We've had Eddie Howe at Bournemouth, where he almost overstayed his tenure at Bournemouth, where he took Bournemouth to the highest level that they're going to get. And from there on, they were 12th, 10th in the Premier League. And for a club like Bournemouth, don't get me wrong, they probably do have the potential when money is invested. But you can only take them so far when they were the bottom of League Two. So what I'm referring to with Burnley's case, Sean Dyche has taken Burnley to a point where they can only get so far. And I feel like the time is coming now where they're almost on the downturn, or it's bound to be. And I'm wondering if this year is going to be the year that they're going to start struggling. So from, was it the 11th, 10th spot where they were very comfortable in the Premier League, I think they are going to drop down slightly to about 16th-ish.
So, have they? What have their signings been like over the summer? That's the one thing I question.
They've signed a few players, but they haven't been the headliners. Like, Leeds went out and bought a 30 million striker coming up from the Championship, and an international proven striker. So that's a statement to make there. Burnley haven't had that, and I'm sure they don't really have the same finances. They're not as exciting, as probably ambitious to be going and doing these things, because they know that what they have at the moment is kind of there and abouts. They don't need to improve as such.
Sorry, so just looking at it, they've basically made like 2 defensive signings. So they've signed basically a backup goalkeeper and some defender from Man United. So it's nothing considerable. So yeah, it looks like they're going to struggle this year based on the fact that they don't have any new talent, and it's going to be the same players with the same tactics. We more or less know what you get from Sean Dyche, and people will find it out eventually. Like, if they haven't already, they will do pretty soon, and it'll just be more of the same. Like, it's it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that.
Yeah. So moving on, next 2 spots, I think they're going to be very close, and it's people think it's a local derby, but I think it's not as local as people think. But it's Croydon, local, and Brighton. So by Croydon, I mean Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
People don't know. So I think it's going to be between both of them, because I think even though Brighton have gone and improved, as we say, the Premier League gets more and more competitive. So even though Brighton have a younger team who are more ambitious this year, I think they are going to be a little bit more comfortable than they were last year. But it's not going to be too big of a mark to be, that 11th, 10th, 9th spot bang on in the middle. So with Crystal Palace, we've seen it against Man United. Their wingers will rip into the fullbacks. Zaha and Ayew had the best of games against Man United's defence. And I'm not saying Man United is the best team or the worst team out there, but it's a Premier League defence. They're a solid team who came 3rd last year. So I think that they'll be there and thereabouts, but I also feel like they will have a few wobbles along the way against the smaller teams, because they're not a very consistent club to be playing. So 14th, 15th, I reckon, for those 2.
Okay.
Next 2, we'll do the next 2 again. So I reckon Newcastle, 13th. They haven't had their new trillionaire or gazillionaire owners come in, but they have signed a few stars from Bournemouth. So those few stars, I think, were probably and arguably the best players at Bournemouth, where they had, Fraser and the other guy, I can't remember. But there was 2, Wilson, that was it. And those 2 players, I feel like they will do quite well there. I feel like Newcastle's other signings, Ethan Ampadu, Chelsea loanee, will do okay as well. I don't think he'll be that tremendous, but I think there'll be a few appearances where people will raise their eyebrows and be like, oh, yeah, he's got some quality.
A Chelsea loanee? Surely not. They don't loan anyone out.
I can't believe that, can you?
Exactly. They don't let talent go anywhere. They just keep it all in-house and just let them play, right?
Never buy anyone either.
Huge transfer spending. What's that? I have no idea. As a West Ham fan, I legitimately have no idea what a huge transfer spend is. I would just imagine the day that we spend upwards of 20 million on a player, on multiple players.
Yeah, but then again, I feel like your owners are a little bit dodgy as well.
Oh, don't get me started on them. That's a separate pod in itself. Just me ranting about the owners and their shoddy management. But yeah, like Newcastle were kind of banking on the investment from the Saudi royal family, and then just being able to go out and buy shit tons of players, and that just hasn't happened.
I don't think they've done too badly, even with Mike Ashley. It's surprising that he's spent money.
I know, right? I'm amazed he hasn't just skimmed off the top and stuck it straight in his back pocket. But you know, that lack of investment will still continue to hamper them. And I think, you know, putting them, what was it, like 13th, 12th, 13th? You put them
13th, yeah.
13th. You know, that's a pretty good spot. I think that's pretty accurate there. And who did you say was above them?
And above them, last year's promoters even, Aston Villa. I think they've improved with quite a few players this year. They've kept Grealish, who signed a new contract. They've bought a number of relatively good players.
Villa didn't get promoted, but yes, do continue.
Last year.
Oh,
not
right,
this year.
All right, sorry. Keep going.
So I think they'll improve on what they did last year. Of course, they scraped it last year and was it 17th. I think this year they have improved players. Their players are more experienced. So 12th place, I reckon.
Okay.
Moving on to 11th place, I think this is where things are starting to get a little bit tougher. Where you've got the mid-table bunch. So I reckon it'll be Sheffield United. I think they were on a massive high last year. I think this year clubs will find out a little bit more about them. And I reckon that it will be that season that, you know, they had one very, very good year. This is going to be the reality check.
Their hangover year, where this obviously isn't a club, but the player that springs to mind is Chicharito, where he had that amazing year at Man United, where he would come off the bench and just bang goals. And then the following year, he got found out, and then they ended up selling him to Stuttgart or something like that. You get the idea, right? You're amazing in your first year because no one really knows how to deal with you.
There's a lot of examples like that with many other players, many other teams. But I think with Sheffield United, this will be a real good season for them in a sense of they might. I mean, 11th place is a very respectable place for someone who got promoted last year.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is that I'm not sure that they'll do the same as well as they did as last year. That's all. So 11th place for me. I think that's quite realistic for them.
Yeah, I think so.
Bang on mid-table.
Their keeper as well.
Yes, of course. I forgot Henderson's back at Man United.
Yeah, exactly.
Not back. 10th place, I reckon it will be Southampton. So their manager has had some more experience there. I mean, they've lost like 9-0, wasn't it, to Leicester last year? They've had some scenes, and I think ever since that loss, they've only gotten better and better.
So you think that was like the rock bottom for them to just start moving up?
Yeah, I mean, Southampton have been a very solid club for the last 7-8 years since they've come up to the Premier League. But I think that 10th place for them, they'll do well. They've got Danny Ings, who, you know, had he played for a top Premier League club, he would have been right up there. But he is very much putting them up the table.
If he was at a bigger club, I mean, it's a shame.
Yeah, he was at Liverpool though, and he got injured, didn't he? So it was real shame for him. But Liverpool haven't missed him, and I don't think he's really missed Liverpool. So it worked out both ways.
Exactly. Yeah, he's doing well as he is.
So 9th place, this is where the next little pack of teams gets very difficult to predict. I think it'll be Leicester. So of course they're on a massive high as well. Well, when you go up the table from that, you'll see what I mean. So,
why 9?
I think they were on a massive high last year. They bought a few players, but again, I think everyone else improved around them massively. Every club that's finished in the top half of the table has bought or brought in new players.
Right.
So, I might be wrong.
They haven't really had that investment this summer, and so that could hold them back.
They've had players come in. I just don't know if Leicester's, again, it's very weird because of course they won the league a few years ago, and that was just insane what they did. But you question how high they can actually go, because of course it's only going to happen once in our life when something like that happens. It won't happen again. They didn't get Champions League last year, and they've got you've got Europa League football to play alongside the Premier League. I am not sure they have the squad depth to deal with that unless they go out quite early, which I think they've got a half decent team to go, quarters or at least the knockout stages. So I'm not convinced by them having to play European football and Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great for them just to give their fans like some kind of European or a cup run to go on, whether it's FA Cup or European football or whatever it may be. And I think the owners would be interested in doing that for sure. Like when they won the league and then they went to the Champions League, they put decent teams out to play Champions League, and you kind of have to. And I would hope that they don't do what Spurs did a couple of years ago, where they intentionally lost Champions League games so they didn't need to play anymore, just to focus on the Premier League to get back into the Champions League next year, which in itself doesn't make sense. I think they would come into it with the mindset where they would try to enjoy it and try and be competitive. And that if they don't have the depth, as you say, then that could impact on their Premier League performance.
Yeah. And when I'm just like going to say the next few teams, you understand what I mean, to why it's so difficult to predict from now on.
Yeah. It's
but
tough.
The next team I think will be Wolves.
Okay.
Of course, they've got a few new players, all Portuguese, as we know.
They're just the Portuguese B team. Yeah.
Yeah, they're Portugal without Ronaldo.
Exactly.
They've improved. They've bought that young striker, Silva, who is going to be, I think, he's going to be a real good player. He's only, 21.
Yeah.
But the players they know, Wolves are a quality team. They've established themselves as a good Premier League team now with their manager and their players. But again, they've got European football next year. Can they do it?
Yeah, I mean, would they? It's exactly the same thing as I said with Leicester, where would the owners be interested in them giving the fans a cup run at the sacrifice of doing well in the Premier League? And I would hope that it's a yes, but I don't. I think in my heart of hearts, I think the owners will be like, no, we want to push on to get Champions League teams. So I would probably question that one. I think they would probably finish a little bit higher. But who have you got next?
7th place, I have Everton. So,
okay.
Of course, you have a very, very experienced manager who's just come in, and he's got his first full season in there now.
Yeah.
He's brought in a whole new midfield. And from the first 2 games, from what it looks like, James Rodriguez is going to be a very good player.
Go on, James.
Yeah, he's got Alan, good old Al, behind him, and he's got Doucouré in there. And I think that midfield is looking quite dangerous from a perspective of linking up the attack and the defence. So I think that they're only going to be looking up, and we're talking about a real competitive league now, where you've got a really decent 9 teams going up there. And when we're saying 9 teams, that's half the league, where
exactly.
You don't really want to be playing week in, week out, but that's what the quality of the league is now.
Exactly. It's interesting that you say that, because I was thinking that as we were going through the bottom half of teams, where there's just such a gap in quality between those top 9 or 10, and then the other half where, the correlation is significant investment. And, that's the correlating factors to predict success in the Premier League. And that's quite sad, I think.
It's how the world is nowadays.
It is.
So, 6th place. I mean, as a Chelsea fan, I can say it. I reckon we'll be 6th.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why? Why'd you say that?
Having seen the first 2 games, having seen our goalkeeper, having seen our defence, we're lucky to win against Brighton. I mean, had it not been for James's goal, like just a rocket from outside the box, which in essence it's luck, because you're not going to be scoring goals like that week in, week out. So with all these new signings that have come in, it's a completely different challenge for Lampard. He's got to settle in these players in the first few weeks, because you got to hit the ground running when you're in a position of Lampard that's just spent however many millions on players. And I don't think they're going to be able to cut it straight away. I think the team will maybe start performing after Christmas, if they do, but I think it'll be too late. And with how we know Chelsea's track record of managers, and I hope I'm wrong, because Lampard is Lampard to Chelsea. Yeah. I hope the senior management and ownership will kind of say, like, it is a long-term project. Klopp didn't turn Liverpool into what they are today in a year or two. It's literally taken 4 years. Ferguson didn't turn Man United into what they were how many years ago in a matter of a year or two. It took him about 5 or 6. So I really worry as a Chelsea fan after seeing our performances. I really worry. And I hope I am wrong, but from what I've seen from the other teams, I don't have much hope.
It's going to be interesting. Like I really thought you know, looking at your signings and everything, that you guys would at least make the Champions League, or at least be thereabouts. But you know, you put yourself so low. I'm like, wow, that's a real shock.
And I hope when we look back at it at the end of the year and we do the summary, we'll say how stupid I was. But
mate, I hope so too with the West Ham prediction. I really do.
Maybe I'm just being too pessimistic. I don't know. I will find out.
We will.
So 5th place. This is, I think, is going to be Arsenal. I think they're looking half decent. They bought in Willian, who, by the looks of things, is putting the ball in front of the net for the strikers at Arsenal to just kick them in. So I think he was what they needed in the attacking sense. Defensively, I think they've recruited 2 defenders. I think they've done well. Yeah. Arteta, I think, knows what he's doing. So I reckon for the top 4, again, Arsenal, I'm saying they are improving, but with what the top 4 teams are doing, it's going to be tough, real tough.
Yeah, I mean, they still got quite a young team as well, haven't they?
Quite a few teams have quite young teams, yeah.
Okay, so it's interesting that the trend of the Premier League is to invest more and more in youth, even though, you know, there's a lot of players out there that are in their prime right now that may be more ready to go as such right now, if you follow me.
Yeah, but I also feel the trend is to give young managers a go. And with those young managers, where we've seen it with Solskjaer, Arteta and Lampard didn't have a transfer window to go buy players. Arteta kind of came in. It wasn't at the start of the season, so he just had to get on with what he had. Solskjaer just went and spunked out money on every single person he could think of. So there's a different trend from what every club wants. And I think quite a few clubs have brought in quite a few young players, academy recruits, because of what the FA are saying with the domestic development of players. And when we didn't have this rule, I think it was about 12 years ago, clubs just didn't have any domestic trained players. Whereas now we've had this rule for a decade or so. Clubs know that it's there. They're not going to get around it. So they're just accepting the fact that they have to get on with it. And that's where they're paying more attention to who they're developing, rather than going out and spending 75 million on an attacking midfielder when you've got however many midfielders, but you still go and get a German bloke that looks like he can't play football.
Good old Havertz, eh?
Again, I hope I'm wrong. I hope he gets settled very, very, very quickly. But from what 75 million can get you.
Oh, mate, it's awesome. So, 4th.
So, again, with last year, I think they were very fortunate to be in a Champions League spot. But Man United, how many penalties did they get? I don't think that's going to go away this year. Don't get me wrong. I think they have again, recruited well. They got what's his name, Van den Beek. They got a solid midfield. They got a solid attack. Their defense is a little bit, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm not sure if they'll be 5th or 4th, but I think luck is on their side. So that's why I've put them in a 4th place rather than a 5th place.
Exactly, yeah. Bruno Fernandes still is a very good attacking midfielder, so he'll do very well for them. And yeah, the penalty aspect of it and the I can't remember what it was called, but it was where the refs gave Man United an extra minute or two in stoppage time. Fergie time. That was it. Yeah, and that will still carry on to this day for all of eternity. Fergie time will be applied to Man United. It's great.
Yeah. So 3rd place, I reckon it will be good old Jose.
Okay.
Tottenham. Having watched the documentary, I wasn't fully convinced by what is going on at Tottenham, especially to begin with. But then again, he didn't come in at the start of the season.
Yeah.
He's dealt with a few issues, I think, remarkably well from what they've showed in the All or Nothing documentary. And I think him being him, it is still in his blood to go and win. Even though it doesn't come across the best way in that documentary, I do think he's still about that. And even though I did say beforehand he's past it, yes, he is. That's why I'm not putting Tottenham any further up, because at the end of the day, they're not the Man City or the Liverpools. So I think they are going to massively improve. You got to remember, quite a big number of that team got to the Champions League final, be it was a very lucky way to get there, but they still got there.
Yeah.
So I do think they'll be in the Champions League spot, in my pain to say that another London team will be above us.
Yeah, I mean, it's the trend, isn't it? That Jose's second year is always the year that they make a massive jump up in terms of performance and results. So, logically following that is, I guess, what brought you to put them 3rd.
Yeah, I also think the board, Daniel Levy's gone and got Gareth Bale back. He got that left back, Reguilon back. Oh, not back. He recruited him. So they bought that Højbjerg from Southampton. They bought Doherty. So there's been a few improvements on the squad, and I think with what Tottenham do, they wouldn't go out and spend 75 million on an attacking midfielder they don't really need just for the sake of buying.
Yeah.
So I think they're recruited in a smart way where those signings will really help them.
Okay.
So that's my justification for that. Top 2. The gap is going to be a lot smaller this time round. It won't be like a 25-point difference like it was last year.
So you think it's going to be competitive to the end, or at least till the last couple of weeks?
I'm not. Well, maybe at least until the 35th game. It won't be like, was it the 32nd or the 33rd game?
Yeah, it was one of the earliest in history, wasn't it?
I mean, I don't know. I stopped paying attention because it's competitive. But I think it'll be Man City. I think they'll massively close the gap. But I think they've got Nathan Ake at centre-back, and be it, I might be completely wrong, but they need to keep injuries to a real minimum. Liverpool managed to do that last year, and I think that's why they were so successful.
Yeah.
And this year, I think Man City need to keep Laporte very, very fit, because I think he is that solid centre-back who will keep things under control. I have no question about their attack with De Bruyne and Aguero. Aguero potentially is last year. They've recruited Torres, Ferran Torres. They've got Sterling. Those players under Guardiola, they've been there for a few years. They know what he wants. The system works. So it's the same justification for Liverpool. They've recruited smartly. They got Thiago in from what we've seen against Chelsea. He's done really well. But it's keeping players fit. And between those two up there is who can keep their players fit and not injured to win the league for me this year. It will be maybe a 5, 6, 7 at most point difference rather than 22.
Okay.
So, yeah, that kind of covered all the places.
Mate, you did very well there. I do agree with Liverpool being on top. I think, Man City, especially last year, they were really off it, and Liverpool this year, obviously last year they were incredible. This year they've only got better in terms of some of the signings they've made, and you expect Klopp to just push them that bit further, to keep going and just to sustain this successful period. I would expect them also to go deeper into the Champions League this year. I would expect them, I think this is a team, if they had a little bit more depth, this is a team with potential to win the treble, I think. I think they just need a little bit more depth, especially in the midfield, I think. But other than that, I expect them to win again, and I expect them, Man City, to be the top two. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
No, and it is quite entertaining to watch them. But as I said, and I'm going to keep referring to Salah and Mane, the best players in the league, no doubt about that.
Oh yeah.
But one of them gets injured, or both of them get injured. Liverpool are in for it, aren't they?
Exactly. So, they don't really have the depth. They don't have anyone at that quality as their wingers to just step into those roles and be able to do exactly what they do, unless they go into the transfer market.
Yeah, and I'm sure
be a significant investment. Sorry.
And I'm sure Klopp has got a plan B just in case.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen it, so that's why we're making this prediction.
Yeah, exactly. So this is all assuming like the players stay healthy and things, and it'll be really interesting to see if Liverpool do lose a significant player like that. Although, to be fair, they did lose Oxlade-Chamberlain for a while, and they were still able to win the Champions League. So, it's possible.
Yeah, for all we know, Everton could win the league and Chelsea could get relegated. So,
Everton winning the league, Jesus Christ! Like the Scousers are loving life. Liverpool last year, Everton the next.
Yeah,
do you reckon Liverpool will actually burn down?
Potentially. With how the scenes were when they won the league and the Champions League.
Exactly, mate.
Do fear for the residents of Liverpool who are not football fans.
Oh my God, imagine. Especially in the age of COVID, nothing's going to be safe.
In the age of COVID. What a world. No fans in football. Just boring games, no atmosphere. Yeah. And Everton winning the league. You couldn't wish for anything worse.
And West Ham losing. It gets even worse.
I mean, that's the norm anyway.
I mean, to be fair, it's just as well we didn't have fans there, because there would be riots. There would be actual riots. After the poor performances last year and the poor start this year, I just can't get over how badly we've performed, and it really sucks. But we just gotta move on.
As a fan, all you can do is rant on a podcast about it.
Exactly, rant on a podcast to about 5 people, and we really appreciate you if you listened.
Especially up until now, because exactly. I mean, I can't assume very muchly that my predictions are very interesting.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see if the one guy that listens actually takes issue with the one thing you said. You were like, "What the fuck? My team should be higher," or whatever.
So, I would love that. I would love people to comment and say what their predictions would be, or if they think I'm wrong or anything like that.
Yeah, so please do share, comments, let us know your thoughts and all of that. And we'll see you again next time, hopefully with a slightly longer pod on Wednesdays. That's the plan.
Thanks for listening.